All right, now we're ready to move on to our next speaker. You know, when I got to Houston for Hurricane Harvey, as soon as I got to town, my daughter's telling me, there's this guy, Mattress Mack. He's doing all this great stuff. You know, I see him on TV, I see him on the news, I see him everywhere. So, well, who's Mattress Mack? So she started telling me about him. And you may recognize the name because he was all over the national news during Hurricane Harvey. Jim McAllen, known as Mattress Mack, is a businessman and philanthropist from Houston. He owns the legendary Gallery furniture stores, and of course during Hurricane Harvey, he opened up 2 of his stores as a shelter for those displaced during the storm. All those great beds made a great place for folks to sleep during the storm. They also used their largest moving truck to rescue people displaced by the flooding. Please join me in welcoming our special speaker today, Mattress Mack, Jim McAllen.
Go Astros.
Go Stros, that's right. Thank you very much. I'm certainly honored and glad to be here today. Of course, my little thing goes off as soon as I walk up here. I am honored and glad to be here today at the 2018 South Texas All Hazards Conference. I want to honor the first responders, past, present, and future, who've given so much to our entire country. Thank you for what you do for our country, and thank you for allowing me to be here. I also want to thank everybody who's putting on this conference. It's amazing they put on this conference as large as it is for free, and so thanks for everybody for doing that. And I got to ask you questions as I get started this morning. How many of y'all in here today believe in free speech? A lot of you. Okay, very good. I want to let you know that this is a free speech I'm doing, so come buy some furniture for me when you're in Houston. It was Friday night, August 25th, 2017. I was at Gallery Furniture at the main store on the North Freeway, and we were hunkered down that Friday night preparing for the worst, the arrival of Hurricane Harvey. About 12 of us stayed in the store that night, not knowing what was going to happen the next morning. And I went in the mattress area. I slept on a Tempur-Pedic mattress, and I slept very well that night. I woke up Saturday morning. It was raining cats and dogs. The feeder road had 3 feet of water in it. And the store was closed, obviously, because nobody could get there. And it was a tough day. We never closed on Saturday, but we had to close that Saturday, and a day without cash flow to me is worse than a day without oxygen. So I was very nervous and anxious. I drove around the neighborhood. It finally cleared up there on the north side of Houston about 2 o'clock. I drove around the neighborhood there, and there were several retailers, grocery stores open, so I said, to heck with it. And we opened up, we sold some mattresses and sofas that Saturday, and I went home to my home over there by the Galleria thinking that the worst was over. I slept all night Saturday night. I knew it was raining very hard, didn't think much about it. Got up Sunday morning at 8 o'clock to go to church. Had no water in my house, but there was 3 feet of water in the street in front of my house, so I said I'm not going to do that. Went back in the house. Finally, about 11 o'clock, I'm kind of a impulsive person. I said, to hell with this, I'm going. I got in my little black truck and went through the 3 feet of water, and I got on San Felipe, which is a major street there in Houston, and I'm going down the street, and this lady's in her fancy car, and she's flooded out, and all these big trucks kept going by and pushing water into her car. She motioned me to push her car up on the median, and I did that, and my tailpipes went underneath the water. It was amazing my truck didn't stop there, but it didn't. So I went onto our store right there at Post Oak and Westheimer, and Westheimer, the main street in Houston, was also flooded, but the store was okay because the parking lot's kind of elevated. I got on 610, one of the major thoroughfares interstates in Houston, to come to the main store on North Freeway. And as I went over the first overpass, the cars are coming the wrong way on the freeway. That's when you know that has hit the fan. That is a Texas colloquialism. So I made it out by the store, and I called Jeremy, who stayed there 2 nights in a row. He's an operator like everybody in this room is. Operator, people like all the first responders here, they get things done. I called him and I said, how do I get there? He said, don't take the exit ramp, the feeder road's flooded. Get off on the entrance ramp, come the wrong way on the feeder road, you might get there. And I got there about 12 o'clock. The phones were ringing off the wall. The emails were exploding, the text messages kept going ding, 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 never stopped. Hundreds of people were calling saying, we're going to drown, you got to come get us. It was not that the first responders and the EMTs had done a bad job, it was that they had done a magnificent job. They couldn't have done any better. But all of a sudden we were faced with this flood of biblical proportions. And we decided to open up both stores as shelters, and we had rented all these big 26-foot Penske trucks with a high cube and a high engine to get through the water. But my son James was landlocked in Dallas with his wife and 3 children, so I didn't know how to get out the message. We were going to open the store, so he said, Dad, you got to do a Facebook Live. And I said, boy, I'm 66 years old, I don't know anything about a Facebook Live. So they coached me through a Facebook Live, and I told them that Gallery Furniture North Freeway would be open as a shelter. Gallery Furniture Richmond would be open as a shelter, and if anybody had any, if they needed to be rescued, we'd come out in our trucks and rescue them. And I also said anybody had a commercial driver's license, come to Gallery Furniture North Freeway, we'd give them the trucks, pair them up, and they'd go rescue people. That Facebook Live went out, and in about an hour and a half, it had 4.5 million views. And the people came in. And we gave them the trucks, and they went to rescue the people. You know, we have a sign at the front of the Gallery Furniture store that says, the American West was not settled by men and women who had taken a course on how to be a pioneer. And they went out. And they rescued the people on the overpasses in the driving rain, and they rescued them in convenience stores where they had taken shelter from the storms, and they rescued them in neighborhoods when the Cajun Navy and the other people in boats brought them to the trucks of ours. And we loaded the people in the trucks. 5 or 6, 8 or 10 at a time like cattle, because there was no other way to do it, and we brought them back. And they walked in that furniture store, they were traumatized, and they had their entire lives belonging in a black plastic trash bag. And these 2 brothers went out and rescued 2 groups of people, and I sent them out about 8 o'clock to rescue a 3rd group over off I-10 in Wallaceville in Houston, where the water was really heavy. Almost every car at the Northeast Houston Police Station was totally submerged in water when the officers were out on patrol. And so they went out there, and about 10 o'clock I got a call from this lady. She said, my husband's in the back of one of your trucks at I-10 in Wallaceville. I was talking to him on the cell phone. And all of a sudden, everybody in the back of that truck started screaming, and water was coming in the truck. She said, and then the phone cut off. And I thought to myself, my God, we've drowned 10 people. So I told Anthony, who's another one of our operators out there, he's 6 foot 8 inches tall. I told him and this kid named Junior, who's worked for me since he was 8 years old, Junior's 5 foot tall, I told him to get a truck, and I knew where the GPS system said the truck was that was flooded. I told this 6 foot 8-ish guy to go out with a 5 foot guy and try to rescue these people. That was the odd couple. And they went out. And normally to get there, it would take about 20 minutes, but it took them over 2 hours because every Google map street was black, which means impassable. They finally got close. They tried to get off on the exit of the freeway to get there, and the Cajun Navy was launching boats on the exit ramp, so that didn't work. They finally had to go through this neighborhood, and in that giant Penske truck, the water was already up to the top of the windshield. So they finally stopped and parked in a convenience store, and the weight from the water was so strong it pushed the ice machine down the road. The water was over Junior's head, but Anthony got out to wade through the water and try to find this truck. He knew exactly where it was from the GPS. And he's wading very carefully through the water, trying not to trip over a curb and undulation and looking at the street lights that were still visible. try to get a path to come back once they found the people. And as he waded through the water, he finally got to the truck, and the truck is empty, and now he's totally panicked. And now it's about midnight or 1 o'clock. And his girlfriend, who's also at the store working with me, they're scheduled to get married in 3 months. She has a premonition that he too is drowned. And the tension's so thick you can cut it with a knife. So since there was nobody in the truck, Anthony threw caution to the wind. He's now really panicked, and he started rushing through the water. And he's rushing through the water trying to get back to our truck, and he promptly falls in a manhole. And the vortex of water sucks him in. And he's heading to Galveston Bay. Instinctively, he sticks out his very long arms, catches himself on the concrete, and fights his way up, gets a breath of air, and the water sucks him in again. And he pushed his legs out against the concrete. He had shorts on, ripped all the skin off both of his legs, but he got out. And he went back and found Junior, and then they found this lady with a truck and a boat ramp on the back of the truck and asked her if she knew anything about the people in that truck. She said, yeah, my husband took them to George R. Brown. Anthony said, thank God they're alive. About this time, it's about 2 o'clock out in that furniture store, and we've got about 200 people that are sleeping there. And it's still very hot and very humid. It's raining cats and dogs outside, but we got the air conditioning in that furniture store turned down to about 65 degrees so these people could sleep comfortably. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, the door opens. This little Hispanic girl walks in. She's 6 years old. Her parents were with her, and another guy who I think was her uncle. And all four of them are wet like they've been swimming because they've waded up the feeder road, and this little girl is totally traumatized. And she's wet, and she's hot, and she's frightened. And now she's freezing to death when she walks in with that wet clothing on. She's in that cold air conditioning area. She's the only one out of the four that speaks a word of English, and she comes up to me and she says, "Cuck." She says, "Cuck, can we stay here tonight?" And I have heard my people cry. And they stayed there. And one great big guy kept walking around all night long. He was menacing looking. He was very traumatized. We thought he was going to do something strange. He finally came up to me and asked me where the trash bags were. And he started emptying the trash, and his countenance got all happy. And I said, "What changed?" He said, "I'm able to help people now. That's all I ever wanted to do my whole life." Sounds like a first responder to me. All I ever wanted to do my whole life was help people. And over the next several days, we had all these news media people there. We had the New York Times there. We had the CBS people there, CNN, ABC, NBC, you name it. And they all came in and they asked me the same question over and over and over again. They said, "How could you possibly let all these total strangers into your furniture store and let them sleep on your fancy mattresses or your sofas or your recliners? And you didn't even know who they are." They said, "How could you let these people in here?" My answer was, how could I not? That's the way I was brought up. My beloved parents are both deceased. My beloved brother George is deceased, and all three of them were up there looking down at me saying, "It's your move. What are you going to do?" And you know, Hurricane Harvey was the worst of times for Texas. 50 to 70 inches of rain all throughout Harris County and surrounding areas. The total devastation of Rockport. It was the worst of times. Enough water to power Niagara Falls for 21 days straight. But it was also the best of times for Texas because for one brief moment in time, all of us came together. We forgot about right-wing politics or left-wing politics, and we cared about people, and isn't that what we're supposed to do? And the magnificent first responders who I'm talking to here today were the absolute heroes of Hurricane Harvey, and I came here today to say thank you for all you do for our state every single day. I was told of these first responders in Houston, 2 of them in the back of one of the dump trucks as they went around trying to rescue people. And these officers were in the back of this truck, and it was raining cats and dogs on Monday or Tuesday. And they were sound asleep in the back of the truck because they had been up for 96 hours, and yet they were still out there helping people. And a couple of weeks after the hurricane was over, I had this woman come in the store on a Sunday afternoon. It was very busy. She was wearing a yellow Mormon Tabernacle Church vest. And she said, "Can I bring Gifford Nielsen by and some Mormon people by to see you in a couple hours?" I said, "Sure." Gifford Nielsen played quarterback for Brigham Young University, played quarterback for the Houston Oilers, and he was a sports broadcaster on Channel 11 there in Houston for 25 years. For the last 3 years, he's been the head of the Mormon Church in New Zealand. Now he's back in Salt Lake. But they came in, all these Mormon men and women, and I asked one of them, how many Mormon church volunteers did they have in Houston? She said within 10 days, we had 6,000 volunteers on the ground in Houston from all over the world. And one neighborhood up in North Houston, 500 homes flooded. One Mormon lived in that neighborhood. They mucked out the Mormon's house, and they fed everybody in the entire neighborhood for 6 weeks, and they mucked out every house in the entire area. And I gave this speech in California a couple of weeks ago, and this woman came up to me and said, "That's easy for those Mormons to do. That's the way they were raised." Well, why can't we all be raised that way? And one of those reporters from the New York Times said, "What type of people are you here?" And I said, "We are Texans, and we take care of each other. That's what we do." We take care of each other. And you first responders take care of all of us over and over and over again. On behalf of all my fellow citizens in the state, I'm here to say thank you. Chief Snyder this morning talked about a culture of sharing. I was asked to talk about the role of business and community. The role of a business and community is to provide jobs for Americans. I firmly believe that work is life's greatest therapy. Work is life's greatest therapy. The job of business in the community is to provide jobs for Americans. A friend of mine is named Yvonne Strait. She runs a organization in Brookshire, Texas called Brookwood. It is a home for adults with learning disabilities. They've got people there with Down syndrome and all sorts of traumatic brain injuries. They have lots of men and women who've gotten motorcycle accidents or car accidents and their brain trauma, and they bring them to Brookwood so they can be a citizen there. They're not patients, they're citizens. And they brought in a guy about a year ago who was a big-time business executive. He got in a motorcycle accident, severe brain trauma. And everyone at Brookwood, all 99 citizens, has a full-time job, even the paraplegics, because Yvonne believes that work is life's greatest therapy. And she sees how people's self-esteem goes up so much when they get a job. So they brought this business guy in who had brain trauma, and they couldn't get him to do anything. He was very resistant for about 6 or 8 weeks. And finally they figured out a job he could do, and he started doing this job. And one day Yvonne, one Friday afternoon, was in her office. And this grown man came running down the hallway and had a piece of paper in his hand. He was waving the piece of paper, waving it. And he burst in her room. She was all nervous, didn't know what he was going to do. He said, Miss Strait, look what I got, look what I got, look what I got. She said, "What'd you get, John? What'd you get?" He said, Miss Strait, I got a paycheck. I'm a real person now. The job of business is to provide jobs for Americans and to create a culture of sharing. Through commerce, we are to create a vibrant community of businesses and employees who pay taxes to support infrastructure and can support great first responders like you who are there when we need you. We are to be leaders in times of crisis and to lead. I have had many speaking engagements since this hurricane, And I was given an award by the 4 Chaplains group a couple weeks ago at the McAllen VA Hospital in the Texas Medical Center in Houston. Michael DeBakey is a legendary first responder and a legendary physician. He started MASH, Mobile Air Surgical Hospital, during World War II. Michael DeBakey led a life like all of you in this room do. He led a life built for others. Dr. DeBakey never quit working. He was scheduled to do a heart surgery with my friend Bud Frazier on his 100th birthday, but Dr. DeBakey died when he was 99 years and 10 months old. And I walked in the hospital and I saw his picture there. I felt like he was there right there. And I got this 4 Chaplains Award, which I didn't deserve. The first responders deserved it. But I learned the story of the 4 chaplains, and it's the story of everybody in this room today. It goes like this. It was the evening of February 2nd, 1943. And the U.S. Army transport Dorchester was crowded to capacity, carrying 902 servicemen, merchant seamen, and civilian workers. Once the luxury coastal liner, the 5,649-ton vessel, had been converted into an Army transport ship. The Dorchester was one of 3 ships in the SG-19 convoy, was moving steadily across the icy waters from Newfoundland toward an American base in Greenland. SG-19 was escorted by Coast Guard cutters Tampa, Ensenada, and Comanche. Hans J. Danielson, the ship's captain, was concerned and cautious. Earlier, the Tampa had detected a submarine with its sonar. Danielson knew he was in dangerous waters even before he got the alarming information. German U-boats were constantly prowling these vital sea lanes, and several ships had already been blasted and sunk. The Dorchester was now, however, only 150 miles from its destination, but the captain ordered the men to sleep in their clothing and keep their life jackets on. Many soldiers sleeping deep in the ship's hold disregarded the order because of the engine's tremendous heat. Others ignored it because the life jackets were very uncomfortable. On February 3rd at 12:55 a.m., the periscope broke through the chilly Atlantic waters. Through the crosshairs, an officer aboard the German submarine U-223 spotted the Dorchester. The U-223 approached the convoy on the surface, and after identifying and targeting the ship, he gave order to fire the torpedoes. A fan of 3 were fired. The one that hit was decisive and deadly, striking the starboard side of the Dorchester amidship far below the waterline. Captain Danielson, alerted that the Dorchester was taking water rapidly and sinking, gave the order to abandon the ship. In less than 20 minutes, the Dorchester would slip beneath the Atlantic's icy waters. Tragically, the hit had knocked out power and radio contact with the 3 escort ships. The CGC Comanche, however, saw the flash of the explosion. It responded and then rescued 97 survivors. The CGC Ensenada circled the Dorchester, rescuing an additional 132 survivors. The 3rd cutter, CGC Tampa, continued on escorting the remaining 2 ships. Aboard the Dorchester, panic and chaos set in. The blast had killed scores of men and many more were seriously wounded. Others, stunned by the explosion, were groping in the darkness. Those sleeping without clothing rushed topside, where they were confronted first by a blast of icy Arctic air and then by the knowledge that death awaited. Men jumped from the ship into lifeboats, overcrowding them to the point of capsizing, according to eyewitnesses. Other rafts tossed into the Atlantic drifted away before the soldiers could get into them. Through the pandemonium, according to those present, 4 Army chaplains brought hope in despair and light in darkness. Those chaplains were Lieutenant George L. Fox, Methodist; Lieutenant Alexander D. Good, Jewish; Lieutenant John P. Washington Roman Catholic and Lieutenant Clark V. Bowling Dutch Reformed Church. Quickly and quietly, the 4 chaplains spread out among the soldiers. They tried to calm the frightened, tend the wounded, and guide the disoriented toward safety. Witnesses of that terrible night remember hearing the 4 men offer prayers for the dying and encouragement for those who would live, said Wyatt Fox, son of Reverend Fox. One witness, Private William B. Bender, found himself floating in oil-smeared water, surrounded by dead bodies and debris. I could hear men crying, pleading, praying, Bednar recalls. I could also hear the chaplains preaching courage. Their voices were the only thing that kept me going. Another sailor, Petty Officer John J. Mahoney, tried to re-enter his cabin, but Rabbi Good stopped him. Mahoney, concerned about the cold Arctic air, explained he had forgotten his gloves. Never mind, Rabbi Good responded, I have 2 pair. The rabbi then gave the petty officer his own gloves. In retrospect, Mahoney realized that Rabbi Good was not conveniently carrying 2 pair of gloves, and that the rabbi had decided not to leave the Dorchester. By this time, most of the men were topside, and the chaplains opened the storage locker and began distributing life jackets. It was then that Engineer Grady Clark witnessed an astonishing sight. When there were no more life jackets in the storage room, the chaplains removed theirs and gave them to 4 frightened young men. It was the finest thing I have seen or hope to see this side of heaven, said John Ladd, another survivor who saw the chaplain's selfless act. Ladd's response is understandable. The altruistic action of these 4 chaplains constitutes one of the purest spiritual and ethical acts a person can make. When giving their life jackets, Rabbi Good did not call out for a Jew. Father Washington did not call out for a Catholic, nor did Reverends Fox and Poling call out for a Protestant. They simply gave their life jackets to the next man in line. As the ship went down, survivors in nearby rafts could see the 4 chaplains, arms linked, kneeling, and braced against the slanting deck. Their voices could also be heard offering prayers. Of the 902 men aboard the United States Army Transport Dorchester, 672 died, leaving 230 survivors. When the news reached American shores, the nation was stunned by the magnitude of the tragedy and the heroic conduct of the 4 chaplains. Valor is a gift. Valor is a gift, Carl Sandburg once said. Those having it never know for sure whether they have it until the test comes. The test came for all the first responders in this room and all across Texas during Hurricane Harvey. The first responders demonstrated they had enormous valor. Thanks for what you do.